Hey, deserving listeners, this is Chapter 9 in my deep dive on apologies and forgiveness. I thought I would start off this chapter by continuing my analysis of Chris Brown's apology to the public, which I'm a part of, so he's apologizing to me. So as an introduction to the deep dive lecture on apologies and forgiveness, I thought I would watch this.
Some of the things, when you hear about all the things that the police and the reports say you did, how do you react to that?
I don't. I gotta just look at it and like, wow, like, I'm in shock because, first of all, that's not who I am as a person, and that's not who I pride myself on being. So I just, when I look at like the police reports or I hear about the police reports, I don't know what to think. I just don't know what to think. It's just like, wow.
You remember doing it?
No.
Don't remember doing it?
I don't, it's like, it's crazy to me. Like, I'm like, wow.
What?
Okay, if that is true, which I have talked about previously while reacting to this, that can be the case sometimes, that people will say they see red or they will be told that they were violent with someone. Even long spans of violence can occur with people that are dissociative or having a traumatic reaction and or highly intoxicated, right? I don't know if I included the clip, but Larry King asked him if he was intoxicated, and Chris Brown said he didn't want to talk about it, so that, you know, leaves the door open for him to have been intoxicated to some extent. And if he was severely intoxicated on alcohol, then often people will forget and won't encode memories during that time. But anyway, if that's true, if he doesn't remember, you think he would have a better response to that. He would be like, yeah, I don't remember any of that. I remember bits and pieces, but the story as I understand it to happen, it's shocking to me, you know, something like that. Not just like, yeah, I don't remember. He just seems so nonchalant, like he just doesn't even care.
Did he say to you, Joyce, when this happened, the first time you spoke to your son?
He came and he actually spoke to me about what happened, and I was totally shocked, totally upset about the whole situation. I know that Chris has never, ever been a violent person, ever. I mean, throughout the entire time, even through high school or anything, I've never been called or
never.
Different. Never.
Weren't there some?
So that's a bit of a myth that people who commit intimate partner violence are violent in general. Some are, for sure, but some never exhibit violence outside of their intimate relationships, their romantic partnership relationships, because violence is different in different contexts. There are people that you might know who will get violent at a bar while drinking or something, or they're a hothead while they're driving on the freeway and they're screaming and flipping people off. And those are different categories of violence and of having a temper and an anger problem. But it's very different when one is being violent with your partner. The motivations, the way in which it plays out is very, very different, right? When you are at the bar and someone steps on your foot and you're prone to getting angry and pushing someone, the motivations involved and the pattern involved in someone being abusive to their partner is a completely different set of circumstances around attachment and control and gender and sexism and misogyny and modeling and what you feel entitled to in a partnership and attachment injury and emotional issues. One of the things that we would assess for when people were mandated into our treatment group was we tried to delineate between those two groups of people, because there were some people that just generally had a problem with violence and anger and emotional regulation, and those people didn't need as much treatment, because if you give them a model for understanding their emotions and intervening on their distress level, then pretty quickly, if they follow the program, they will actually be able to turn things around. Whereas with domestic violence treatment and the personality underpinning that generate that behavior, they're much more ingrained in one's personality. The individuals believe that it's okay, that they're entitled to it. It's normal. It's what emerges. It's like for the rest of us who presumably are not violent in this way, hopefully, when your partner says something hurtful to you, we have a gauge as to what is fair to respond, right? So say like your partner promised to pick you up from the airport and they forget, and you're like, where are you? And your partner's like, oh, I forgot. They finally come pick you up, and you say to your partner, it's like, so what, you just forgot that I was flying in from at it back home? Like you just forgot? Like what's going on? Okay, you could imagine a response like that, right? It feels commensurate, it feels fair, it feels normal to have that kind of emotional expression, that kind of exasperation at someone. Well, to people with intimate partner violence tendencies, they believe that systematically abusing someone violently for 30 minutes is normal. That's just what you do. Of course, that's okay. And sure, society says something different, and the judge says something different. But we all understand that you got to put women in line, and so those kinds of personality aspects have to be worked on. Okay. And it takes a long time. You essentially have to deprogram someone. You have to de-brainwash someone away from that. It's like trying to get someone out of a cult. It's very akin to that, honestly. You're trying to get someone to completely throw away and disregard their entire model for romance and ethics and morality and relationships and attachment. They have to dismantle so many different ingrained beliefs because that's what they learned. That's what was modeled to them growing up.
Previous charges with Rihanna, weren't there some altercations in the past?
There were no charges ever.
No charges, no.
No. So when you look...
Okay, so that gets to what I was saying previously, which is that he was saying in the previous apology that he was aghast at his behavior and he always was this good person prior to that. And I was taking issue with that, saying like, well, it's not likely. It could be, but usually there are a number of behaviors that will precede an event like that, a progressive buildup to that, or at the very least previous relationships or something. It wouldn't be likely that all of a sudden you just had this one-time event where you did something like that. And so we just heard from Larry King that there are some other allegations, and the mom and Chris Brown says that charges were never brought up. It's like, well, again, I can see why, because again, the vibe I have about the public reaction, at least to a certain sector of the public discourse, is that they were very angry at Chris Brown for not only doing what he did, but his response to it. And did he do it again afterwards? I don't know. But I could see just from this interview of people having a lot of anger at him because he just seems to be blowing it off and acting like it's no big deal and not taking responsibility at all. I could also even see how his first apology would set up this expectation, because this is, I think, the first time he's been on camera talking about it since that first apology. So it could feel like the rug's being pulled out from underneath you, where, especially if you're a fan.
Look at this. Do you feel like you're looking at someone else?
Yeah, from the outside looking in. When you see on TV, when they saying this, when they saying
Look,
that.
you punched her a number of times.
Yeah.
You threatened to beat the blank out of her. When you got home, also said you warned you were going to kill her. You bit on the ear and finger. Now, you hear all that.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, this is always the disparagement here. You have a lawyer for you. You don't appear like a violent person at all.
No.
In fact, you appear rather calm, rather nice. So.
Yeah, it's another myth that somehow people who commit these kinds of crimes are these crazy people, quote unquote, who are running around all the time. And, it's certainly some people are like that, but the vast majority are not. They're triggered, and then they go into this other set of behaviors. One could argue it's, to some extent, a different state of mind that they enter. But anyway, so we did hear Larry King rattle off some more details, biting her. Yeah, it sounds like in that category that I would hear, where it was more towards the severe end and much more problematic.
He doesn't want to violate that, and I respect him.
But his own actions should be explained, don't you think?
Well, he's explained them in detail to his lawyer. He's explained them in detail to his mom, and he's explained them in detail
This is his
to her.
kind of television.
Right, I understand, but I don't know that. I don't know, and I.
Yeah, Larry King, he's passed rather recently, and he was a very experienced interviewer, and he's trying to make an entertaining show, and he's probably frustrated with the fact that Chris Brown comes on the show and basically says, I don't want to answer that question, and gives these very milquetoast, anemic responses to the questions that he does answer. So I think Larry King's like, I don't understand. He could answer these questions. How come he's not answering at least generally speaking, some of these questions.
Brown major endorsements. Wrigley dropped him as a pitchman. So did the Got Milk campaign, with both citing what they call serious allegations. The story has also stunned the hip-hop community. In a radio interview, Kanye West was quick to come to Rihanna's side.
Rihanna is so important to our culture, to pop music. In that sense, I feel like that's my baby sis, and I would do any and everything to help her in any situation.
I just want to cover this, Chris. You said, according to the probation report, Chris, there were at least 2 other incidents of domestic violence between you and Rihanna before the February 8th assault. Neither was ever reported to authorities. Why?
Because I don't know.
You think it never happened?
Yeah, I'm not aware of those incidents.
It says the first incident took place last year in Europe. A verbal dispute, you shoved her into a wall in Europe, and according to the probation report, the second incident took place in Barbados, driving in a car again, and you got out of the car and broke the front driver and passenger side windows. Are those false reports? Was that in the probation?
That was in the probation report.
Well, that means the probation officer learned that, right?
No, I think what the probation officer did was take something that he saw in another report. I don't think that in fact, I'm positive that if you look at the probation report, he never spoke to Rihanna, nor was there a statement that was delivered.
Are you saying it never happened then?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have, especially of those of that nature. Like, as an actual couple, like, we have disputes and arguments, but it never got to the extent that I got to this.
Okay, so Larry King is adeptly asking some questions based on the probation person's report, which means that it should be at least somewhat credible, and the lawyer is trying to step in there, and then Chris Brown is saying it didn't happen. So, yeah. It's now again, he's pre-treatment, so is there an interview with him after he goes through treatment?
Like, as far as, because I already had apologized to Rihanna, and me and her had established that I was sorry, and she knew I was sorry. And then from there, I just wanted to tell my fans and the people who are like, oh, well, what happened? And well, not the people who already want to scrutinize me and whatever, just my natural fans and all my fan base.
In light of this interview, it kind of taints the original apology video that he posted. It kind of makes it seem like, especially as he's saying, I want to get it out there for the fans, it makes it seem like he was trying to manipulate the marketplace so that he wouldn't lose his job and money and fame and power. So it didn't look that way with that first video, but given his demeanor in this interview, it's like, well, what happened to that guy? Now, it's possible that in that moment, in that state, he was more in touch with his emotions, and now he's not. I don't know.
Who actually looked up to me and prided themselves on listening to my music or having a good feeling about me. I wanted to express to them how I felt and how I was.
In the video you posted, you say you're sorry and weren't able to handle the situation both differently and better. How do you explain that?
Just differently and better. Just me being a bigger man, like when a problem occurs, instead of walking away, handling situations very different, and just being mature about it and not handling stuff immaturely.
What kind of input did you have on that video?
So again, to frame it as he should be a bigger man, which honestly is a little concerning, because when abusers that I was treating, when they frame everything in terms of gender, it's a red flag that they're still holding on to this set of notions that they use defensively to counteract their low self-esteem and their insecurities. They step into this space of toxic masculinity as a way of trying to make themselves feel better and as a way of justifying their behavior, as a way of trying to, because you imagine when people are very insecure and they feel like they're lesser, then a fast, very quick, ineffective, but natural way that people will go is if I overpower someone else, if I'm better than someone else, then I will feel temporarily superior, and thus I'll be able to temporarily cure me from my own insecurities. I'll feel, at the very least, I'm better than this person because I'm beating them in this submission, right? Or I'm intimidating them, and thus I feel a little bit more powerful. But generally speaking, I feel powerless, I feel worthless, I feel insecure. So some of these men would be very interested in toxic masculinity talk and the alpha male and gender roles and the way of genetics and testosterone. You know, they're very into all that kind of pseudoscience because it's not a scientific fact that the things that they were talking about. But then the other thing he says is that he doesn't want to be immature. And again, he's pre-treatment, so it's not an immature thing for people to do what he did. It's not a sign of immaturity. Okay. Because, I mean, it depends on how you frame it, because immature people do not generally do what he did. There are many people who are much more immature than he is and still don't do what he did. So it's not a matter of immaturity. It's a matter of what I've been talking about previously.
A lot of people for a lot of reasons, including the fact that Chris had spoken out about his mother having been a victim of domestic violence. Here's some of what you told Tyra Banks. This is all before all the incident. Watch.
It affected me, you know what I'm saying? Basically, especially towards women, I treat them differently because I know I don't want to go through the same thing or put a woman through the same thing that person put my mom through. You know?
What happened?
I made a mistake. And it's just something I have to live up to and own, and just know that I can change and be a better person.
Yeah, so again, pre-treatment, but this is often how individuals like this will react at first, because they either don't know why they did it, so they don't have a way of addressing that, or they're just trying to avoid it. They're saying, I just have to be better, I don't know why I did it, I'm a good person, I treat women well. You'll hear that from abusers, and to some extent, it's true in relative to the way they saw their father treat their mother. They might actually treat their partners much better than they saw their father treat their mother. So to them, they treat women with respect. And they might even be withholding and really suppressing a lot of impulses to be more violent and more disrespectful. And they're proud of themselves for that, and they should be. But the gauge that they have that they've arrived at a good place is wrong-headed, of course, because they think they're average, but they're not, right? So the fact that he believes that he treats women with respect, and he was talking about earlier, and that he knows not to be a certain way because of the way that he was raised, is partially true, but maybe with treatment he'll learn he has a long way to go.
But I definitely made a mistake.
Do you ever think maybe something's the matter with me?
I mean, when I'm not saying I have a problem, but when people, I'm willing to get counseling. At the end of the day, I'm willing to learn myself more, because me being 20, I don't know everything.
So I will say that if I heard that from someone when I was beginning with them, that would be all that I could hope for. That someone would say, no, I don't really think anything's wrong with me, but I'm willing to give this a try. Because there were worse presentations where people are like, look, I know nothing's wrong with me, and I'm just going to do what I need to do, and do your thing. Meaning, I'm not really here to participate, and I'm never going to be open to counseling. I'm never going to be open to what's happening here. So when people see this, they might be like, there's nothing wrong with you? But again, it's pre-treatment. It's the modeling he went through. It's the indoctrination into our society. I'm really curious as to what he said after treatment.
They were the perfect couple, but inside the relationship, something disturbing was beginning to emerge. Last February, the paparazzi captured these photos of the glamorous couple at a party. But just hours later, Rihanna told the police that Chris Brown bit and punched her so hard that her mouth began to fill with blood. The shocking photo surfaced on TMZ. Public opinion turned against him.
And Rihanna, if it happens again, you better run for the hills.
Flexing and looking at other women.
That made me so angry.
It was something that I really had to think about, and I was like, man, I let a lot of people down.
His advertisers dropped him, and music stations across the country banned his songs. But it was the apology he posted on his website that drew some of the sharpest criticism.
Hi, I'm Chris Brown. Since February, my attorney has advised me not to speak out, even though ever since the incident, I wanted to publicly express my deepest regret and accept full responsibility. I had a week, or not even a week, maybe 3 or 4 days of PR, and they just telling me like, okay, don't say this and don't say it this way because they're gonna take it this way. And so I had in my head wasn't really giving me a chance to be me. It was just being myself through other people. It was genuinely for me, but it wasn't
projected genuine.
I want to play.
What's interesting, so it sounds like he's saying that people didn't receive it as genuine, that they thought that first video by him was fake and wasn't commensurate with what he did. And certainly it wasn't enough, to really exhibit true remorse, and also certainly wasn't elaborate enough, and I talked about that back then. But in terms of public apologies that I've seen, I thought it was a good start. Again, later on, he gave other interviews that seemed to negate that whole thing. But that's interesting. So people, they thought it wasn't genuine. And I will say that sincerity and genuineness is hard to gauge, right? It's something that is in the eye of the beholder. So I'll say this beholder of these eyes, when I saw his apology, I thought it could be sincere. I can't know because someone could act in a certain way, but it didn't look obviously insincere like some of the public apologies that I've seen before. But I don't know. Am I in the minority?
One clip from you that Rihanna said, and just get your reaction to it. Can we play it right now?
The face, the broken arm, the black eye, it's gonna heal. That's not the problem. It's the scar inside.
The scar inside. When you hear her say that, can you understand that?
Yes, absolutely.
And
I can see what damage it does, mentally more than physical.
He forgot the pain that he witnessed with his mom. Like, he forgot that.
Is it difficult for you to hear Rihanna say those things?
It is. It's real difficult. It hurts, but it's just something that I have to be responsible for because I'm responsible for my actions.
And how have the classes helped you, these mandatory classes?
In this class, I'm not saying necessarily teaches you how to love, but like those emotions that get mixed up when you're just in love, or just whether it's jealousy, insecurities, whatever the case may be in relationships, it teaches you how to be responsible for who you are.
3 weeks after.
All right, so we're hearing him refer to the treatment that he's mandated to complete. They're referring to as classes, and certainly I could see a client considering it that way, but that's not the way I framed it to them. I said, this is in-depth therapy, what you're receiving right now. This is not a class, because there were classes on anger management. What we were doing in domestic violence treatment was treatment. It was clinical treatment. It was hardcore treatment of one's personality, of the whole shebang. So he's now a little bit into the treatment. I imagine he's only maybe a couple months, so that would still be very early in the game. So that would still be very early in the treatment. So because I'm not really hearing anything from him that indicates that he's changed.
After the assault, fans were shocked to learn that they had reconciled in Miami. But Rihanna soon decided to break up with him. He wrote a song, Changed Man, as a plea for her forgiveness.
All right, so apparently he wrote a song that was an apology. Let me read those lyrics. All right, so the song is called Changed Man. All right, so the first verse is kind of hard to interpret, but the second one I think I know what he's referring to. He says, what do you do when the truth isn't quite enough? They looking at you, telling you we need to break up. You need to trust what you do. It's you and me in love, but I'm going to make it up to you and show the world. So I think this verse is referencing how they got back together afterwards, which is normal for that to happen for a variety of reasons, which I won't go into and have in previous episodes. But I think what he's saying is the truth is that we have a good relationship and the world is against us and telling us that we need to break up, and you need to not leave me because you and I know the truth, which is that we're a good couple, right? And then I think in the chorus, he says, I'm a changed man because you mean so much to me. I don't want to be done. I'm doing all that I can. There's nothing in these lyrics. I don't know why. I keep looking for a hint or some sign that Chris Brown understands what he did and is apologetic truly. And, I'm not really getting that from this. Yeah, I'm reading the rest of these lyrics. It's just basically him pleading with her to take him back, essentially, and not believe the haters. And what I'll say is that that's a very common part of the abusive cycle, is that when someone has the personality traits that result in their decisions or influences their decisions to be abusive to their partner, they will sometimes, often feel apologetic, or at least give some indication that they're sorry, or that they don't want to lose you after the abusive incident happens. And then once you get sucked back in, they start to relax, they stop being super nice to you anymore, and then the tension builds, and then the attack will happen again, and it just goes round and round. So I don't know if that's what was happening in the situation, but I wouldn't be surprised.
What is it that you would like to say to her?
Me and her have talked, me and her have spoken about the situation, and she knows how sorry I am. She's heard the song.
All right, well, I'm sure there are many other videos and interviews I could watch, but just to keep this to the scope of what I'm attempting to do here, I'll just end it there. I feel like I've watched a fair amount. And what I would say in terms of his apology to the public, we don't know his apology to Rihanna. I'm guessing his apology to Rihanna wasn't fantastic, but I obviously can't know that. But I would say his apology to the public, which I'm a part of, if I were to provide my grading system to his public apology, I would say that his first apology to me, apparently to a lot of people it didn't come across sincere, but it seemed sincere at the time. But then hearing him talk in future interviews, it really erased that entire sincerity. Because later on, he didn't seem to be sincere about any of it. He seemed to be claiming that it was just normal, and he was denying all these other allegations. And so, and I don't know, maybe they didn't happen. And then in the subsequent interviews, it just seemed to erase all of that sincerity. So if I use my grading system, if we start from the bottom and say an F, a fail, is completely insufficient, and then, did his overall statements that first year justify bumping him up to a D where he's slightly sufficient? Yeah, I would say, because I'm grading him on a curve with other public apologies that typically don't involve any statements of taking responsibility. They will typically deny all responsibility, or they'll framing in a way of like, well, it's just locker room talk, that kind of thing. So I will give him credit for not doing that. But it certainly isn't a C, which is mostly sufficient. I give people a B for being sufficient, A for being more than sufficient. So I certainly wouldn't give him a C, anything close to a C. And really, even slightly sufficient depends on me believing that some of the things that he says is actually indicative of him taking responsibility and him taking ownership of what he did. Because in subsequent interviews, he seems to be even denying that to some extent. It's like, well, I lose my temper. Things happen. We're debating between D and F, and so I will, in terms of my system, I'll give him a D, because he's got to be better than the Donald Trump, which I gave an F. I kind of gave an F plus to him. I gave Bill Clinton a D, right? All right, well, that does it for that episode. So the rest of this episode will just be for patrons of the podcast. If you want to listen to the rest of this, you have to go to patreon.com, become a patron. Do it if you want to. Otherwise, everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.